This week's Global Travel Update presented by Rosetta Stone, helping you speak freely worldwide.
And good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of our Global Travel Update. I'm inside the library on board the brand new Silver Nova, the newest ship, actually only the second newest ship in the Silversea fleet. And as we're cruising the inside passage between Ketchikan and Vancouver, and of course, happy to take all of your questions today. We got lots of stuff to talk about. One of the things we can talk about right away is that cruising is exploding. More new ships filling all the cabins. Believe it or not, by the end of this year, 35.7 million cruisers will have sailed just in 2024 alone. But here's the interesting statistic. You know, the old days it used to said that the only people who took cruises were the newlywed and the nearly dead. Actually, 42% of all cruisers today are under the age of 40. That's a remarkable change and a drastic difference in the demographics. So you have different cruise ships for different tastes. This particular one is on the luxury side, so pity me. But what's amazing about this particular ship are the food offerings, their special kitchens, their test kitchens, and their salt program, the sea and land taste program. An amazing opportunity to, wherever you're going, on whatever destinations you're going to, eating the food from those destinations and sourcing that food with the chefs when you're ashore. It's a great opportunity. Of course, I've been working on one of our new specials on Alaska. So don't think I've been lounging by the pool. I have not. Although yesterday I did manage to take a few hours off, and look what happened. There I am. That's right. That's a halibut. I was in Ketchikan, the salmon capital of the world. No salmon for me yesterday, but caught the halibut. I want to thank Captain Grayson from Baranoff Fishing Excursions for helping me do that. And that was a fun experience out there. You cannot not catch a fish when you're in Ketchikan. So I didn't break the string. But now let's get serious because we have a lot of things about strings that did get broken. The fallout continues from the software meltdown of a couple of weeks ago, especially with Delta Airlines. It's probably going to cost them in compensation, not to count any fines that may be coming from the U.S. Department of Transportation. It probably cost them about $500 million for starters because they were forced to sort of continue the precedent set by Southwest Airlines back in December of 2022 of doing what? Providing compensation that goes beyond giving you just a voucher and a future flight credit, a full refund. How about that? Plus compensation for other costs that were associated with the meltdown. Alternate forms of transportation, meals, clothing, accommodations, and many, many other things. So the cash register is still ringing it up, and the U.S. DOT is continuing their investigation. And a word about vouchers, okay? Forget the meltdown that just happened. Let's just talk about the fact that you're on your way somewhere, you're going to change flights in an intermediate city, the flight is canceled, and are they going to offer you accommodations for the night because you're stuck there? A lot of airlines say they will, or they'll give you a voucher good for a hotel room. That is often meaningless because, first of all, that doesn't guarantee you that you're going to get a hotel room, number one. And the dollar amount of that voucher doesn't guarantee you're going to have anywhere near what you need to pay for it. These vouchers are negotiable. Don't ever leave the ticket or the ticket counter or the gate without having the airline first guarantee the hotel that they're sending you to, right? Make sure it's not 80 miles away, but it's within a 6-mile radius of the airport. Otherwise, it defeats the entire purpose. If it's 12 o'clock in the morning and your next flight's at 7 in the morning and they're sending you, 60 miles out of town, that ain't going to cut it, all right? Same thing with meal vouchers. How many times has a flight been delayed or canceled and they give you a meal voucher with a dollar value that might buy you one demented Cinnabon? Sorry, guys, that won't work either. Also negotiable. The two words I want you to remember in any of these flight disruption situations, these two words are keep receipts. Oh, yeah. Two more words. I take that back. 3 more words. Get full names of the people you talk to and their titles. You'll need to establish a paper trail so you can file claims later. It always helps, right? And sending them your credit card statement won't do it. They need to see a detailed credit card receipt or a written receipt as to what you needed to purchase, whether it was food, whether it was accommodations, whether it was clothing, toothbrush, whatever, so that you can get reimbursed. Okay, that's number 1 on that. Okay, moving right along, an update on my sad woe during the meltdown. I finally got my bag back from KLM. I'm in Alaska right now, but the bag has now finally showed up in New York after 8 days. 7 of those days were spent me telling KLM exactly where the bag was, and KLM doing absolutely nothing. Apparently, somebody from the airline watched my last broadcast, and it dawned on them that they might want to help me out, and everybody else as well. I was certainly not alone. We're talking thousands of bags that were not reunited with their owners, and compensation claims are going to be filed there as well, including one from me. I had to go out and buy new clothing in Marseille. I had literally, I always say that I had nothing to wear. I didn't. So I had to buy clothing and I had to buy some essentials. So those claims will be submitted. Now let's move on from that. A couple of interesting good news items I want to share with you. One of my favorite alternate airports in the United States, I can give you a few of them. I love Milwaukee instead of Chicago. I love Providence instead of Boston. I love Oakland instead of San Francisco. But the other one that's my secret favorite airport, are you ready? It's Islip on Long Island, MacArthur Field. And it's an underutilized airport, but you can fly anywhere from there if you just get the airlines to do it. Well, starting in October, 3 cheers to JetBlue. They're going to start service from Islip to Orlando, to Fort Lauderdale, and to Palm Beach. North-south routes. I'm still waiting for other airlines to come in to do east-west routes. A couple of years ago, Southwest was there. They're still there, but Southwest had the all-time great one. They had a nonstop from Islip to Las Vegas. That was essentially the transcon for Southwest, and they filled the plane. But for reasons I still do not understand, they stopped the service, and they were flying full aircraft. I'm waiting for an airline to come back in. Are you listening to me, Breeze? They've got the equipment now to do it with those Airbus 220s. They can fly now nonstop from Islip to LAX. Let's do a real transcon for a change. I'll let you know what happens if they ever do that. Okay. Remember the incident with the former NFL star on the United Airlines flight a couple of weeks ago? Right, Terrell Davis? I mean, what a crazy story, because remember, he had about 40 separate witnesses to this. He was flying as a passenger with his wife and kids, and as the flight attendant came down the aisle with a meal cart, the flight attendant did not hear him when he asked, or hear his son when he asked if he could have some ice. So Davis reached out to tap the flight attendant, who then raged at him and said, "Do not touch me," and ran up to the cockpit. And the plane was met by federal marshals and FBI agents who came up the aisle, handcuffed him, and escorted him from the flight. Well, there were about 40 witnesses who left with him on that flight to tell the authorities, "You got it wrong. He did nothing wrong." And in fact, it didn't take long for them to realize the witnesses were right, and they released him. But at the same time, he received a letter from United banning him for life from the airline. Right? Standard operating procedure if you interfere with a flight attendant, but he didn't. Well, here's the epilogue, folks. That flight attendant is no longer working for United. However, I think Mr. Davis is still waiting for an apology from the airline. Remember that this is the same airline that many years ago dragged that dentist off the flight who had a bona fide boarding pass and was already sitting in his seat. That resulted in a 7-figure lawsuit settlement for the passenger, and not a good day for United in terms of service. So I'm waiting to hear what United's going to do publicly to at least address the fallout from that. All right. Speaking of fallout from the meltdown of the software, sit around the terminal? Did they just, sit there and do nothing? Did they spring into action and go nowhere fast? One passenger decided he was stuck with a group of 9 other people on a flight, I believe, to Central America, stuck at a U.S. airport, couldn't go anywhere. No one was talking to him at Delta. So he went to the lounge and decided to take out his revenge by nonstop eating everything he could find in the lounge. Watch the video. Well, not exactly what I would have done, but you get the point. They decided to get their revenge by staying in the lounge and eating and consuming everything they can possibly do. I don't know how much of a message that sent to Delta, but the video is entertaining. But it does talk to the point of how Delta did not recover well when the software meltdown happened. And remember, it gets into a definition of the word control. If the problem is under the airline's control, then you do something. A full refund for your ticket for sure, but other compensation as well. That's the argument that the DOT is using, even though Delta said the software meltdown was not under its control. The DOT begs to differ, saying that Delta ordered that software and never had the backup. Therefore, it was under their control, and they need to do compensation. And Delta is now grudgingly doing that, with or without additional hummus in the lounge. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that passenger-supplied video to you. We now know more about the Southwest Airlines decision to end open seating, instituting a new configuration of their seats on their planes, and what it really means for other policies at Southwest. At the same time, the FAA has launched a safety audit into the entire Southwest Airlines safety culture following some troubling incidents on a couple of their planes. One in Hawaii, where a plane dropped precipitously to the ocean, didn't end up going to the ocean, but it came very close. And one that just happened earlier this month on Southwest flight, I think it was 425, from Columbus, Ohio to Tampa, where the pilots on approach apparently mistook a bridge for the runway and got to 150 feet over the water until, and then at that point, the tower was basically saying, do a go around now, because they were way too low. So now a safety audit is going to be a hands-on inspection of pilot training, maintenance, systems. And what's ironic about this is, of all the airlines, Southwest should never have to have a real safety audit in terms of their planes and their pilots, only because they're the only airline that I know of its size that only flies one type of airplane, which means their pilots are only trained on one type of airplane. Their mechanics are only trained on one kind of airplane. Their spare parts inventory is only about supporting one type of airplane, right? So something's got to be looked at here. Am I saying Southwest is an unsafe airline? Absolutely not. I fly them all the time, but at least the FAA is finally stepping up here, as they have to do, because they're a regulatory agency and they actually need to act like one. So I'll let you know what's happening there. As far as the death of open seating, it was about Southwest Airlines generating much needed revenue. The nice thing about this, or if there's any consolation, they have not ended their policy of checking 2 bags in free for every passenger. That would be a game changer in a negative way. In this situation, as they reconfigure their planes, 1/3 of the seats will be still economy seats, but more legroom, and you'll pay a premium for that. The other 2/3 will be the way they are now, which means, you need an orthopedic surgeon to fly along with you. You can basically anticipate ticket prices are going to rise. That's the general idea behind all this. Some other good news, though, for Southwest. They're starting red-eye flights. That'll happen way before They fully configure the planes, and that really allows them to fly without overnighting a lot of passengers to other to destinations east, especially from Hawaii, where Southwest flies. It allows them to better utilize their aircraft. Planes are not making money when they're on the ground, and it allows them to streamline their schedule during off-peak hours. All of that is good news. All right, somebody asked me a question the other day, and it was an interesting question because I didn't know the answer, but I thought I knew it, and then I found out. And the question, it's a very easy question. Do hotels still allow you to leave wake-up calls? And the answer is not a lot of people do it now because they got their iPhones. But yes, you can. And by the way, I still do. And the reason why I still do it is because if the battery dies or you're a little tired and you set your wake-up call for 7:05 a.m., and you forget, and it actually says PM, you're not getting up. So it's my backstop. I always leave a wake-up call at the front desk, but here's how I do it, and I do it differently. Everybody else who leaves a wake-up call is asking for 6 or 6:30 or 7 or 7:15, and they all get written down on a list that is already predetermined by that time period, right? So the 6 o'clock space on the pad might have 14 room numbers, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get lost there. So I always leave a wake-up call for 6:19 or 7:43. They have to create a new box for me downstairs, and they're not going to miss that one. So that's my handy-dandy tip on wake-up calls for today. Now, let's start answering some of your questions and saying hello to some folks, and then we'll get to some other interesting issues. Hello, let's go back to the top here. Hello to Harriet and Jim in Bethany Beach, Delaware. Greetings from Syracuse to Matthew. Mary Jo saying hi from Chester Springs, Pennsylvania. Melanie saying hi from a hot and steamy Miami. Enjoy the cruise. I am. We're getting off tomorrow, unfortunately. Tayo is saying hello from Maryland. Scott saying, I'm boarding the MSC Seashore tomorrow in Port Canaveral. Your thoughts on the weather in the Bahamas? Well, this gets into travel insurance, of course. You cannot buy a trip interruption or cancellation insurance once a hurricane is already named. A tropical storm doesn't count for insurance policies. And remember, when you buy a cruise, it's actually explicitly listed in the contract of the sale that you signed that the cruise line reserves the full right to substitute ports in the event of any kind of weather emergency or active terrorism or instability. So now, if you're boarding the ship in Port Canaveral, it's not the world's longest cruise to the Bahamas. In that situation, the cruise line might just cancel the cruise if there's a serious weather problem, because there are not a lot of other ports they're going to go to divert. So let me know what happens. All right. Hello from Huntington Beach, and that's Adrian. Paul is saying, greetings from Ashland, Virginia, where the temp is currently 88, heading to the upper 90s. Welcome to summer. Okay. Joy is saying, where do I find Emirates Airlines seating chart? Well, you can start with seatguru.com. Seatguru.com. And here's another idea. Ever think of talking to a travel agent or a travel advisor? They can pull up those charts anytime you want. Okay. Thank you for commenting on my halibut. Thank you, Tayo. Sue saying hi from Bellingham, Washington. Gene saying, going on my first ever cruise next week, inside passage to Alaska. You're going to have a great time. But what I want you to do is think about storytelling and not just the tourism stops that you're going to make when you're going to Skagway or Sitka or Juneau or Ketchikan. Because there's so many other things to do than just seeing what's around the actual dock when you land and taking the traditional bus tours. There are other ways to do it. And that's one of the reasons why we're on this ship, is to be able to do a journalism piece on alternate ways to see Alaska without being stuck on a bus. One of the things you're going to notice, which is what in my book, horrendous, every port you're going to go to. And by the way, I love Alaska, but somehow every port is loaded with 10 to 20 jewelry stores. You'll never see more jewelry and watch stores. They think that the only thing cruise passengers want is to buy another watch. How many wrists do you own? Anyway, go beyond the main streets, and you're going to find some unbelievable opportunities for storytelling and for cultural immersion. And that's what makes Alaska so special. Okay, our opening and closing graphics, Anthony's creation. Colleen wants to know. No, they're not. Nils. Nils is my guy. Nils is one of our editors at Peter Greenberg Worldwide, and Nils put that together. And as you'll see, we change it every week now. So it's a lot of fun. Big hats off to Nils for that. Camilla's saying hello from Tucson, as she always does. Michael's saying greetings from Boulder. I was smart enough to leave Paris on Saturday. Yeah, you weren't alone. Remember, a lot of people didn't even go to Paris or France unless they had tickets to the Olympics, which means Delta Airlines took a $100 million hit on revenue. Air France took a $196 million hit on revenue. Paris is not crowded right now. It's expensive, but it's not full. You want to go fun in Paris? Magic month, September. All right. Paul's saying good luck in Atlanta, inbound from Europe due to an ice storm. Eesh. All right, sorry to hear that. Hello from, where are you, Lorena? You down in Chile? I can't see where it is. Paul's saying got stuck in Atlanta due to an ice storm. We just talked about that. Delta kept saying the connecting flight would take off. It didn't. Had to get a hotel in downtown Atlanta as all at the airport were booked. Well, there we go again. And remember, weather is the great intangible. It's what gets the airlines off the hook sometimes because it's not under their control. And let's be fair, if it's weather, it's not under their control. However, the question is, where is the weather? If I'm trying to leave from Atlanta and I see my plane is parked at the gate and it's a beautiful day, 65 degrees and sunny, and they claim it's because of weather, we got some explaining to do, right? Now, United Airlines is trying to alleviate that miscommunication by sharing with their passengers real-time data on all weather affecting your flight. In many cases, they're even going to send you radar maps so you can see where the storms are moving. I think that's very helpful, and they should be congratulated for that. Okay. Scott says, I owe you $10 on the bag return bet. Remember we had the over and under? All right, Scott, pay off. And Raymond Bixton says, hooray, MacArthur. You know that. You know, MacArthur is one of the great secret airports. Check it out. And by the way, it's only a 5-minute ride from the airport to the Long Island Railroad. And then you hop on the Long Island Railroad, you're in Penn Station or Grand Central. Try doing that on the Van Wyck or the Grand Central Parkway or the Long Island Expressway or even the Southern State Parkway. It's a better deal. Train it right to Ronkonkoma. Take the taxi for 5 minutes to MacArthur. By the way, TSA lines there, it's one guy named Vern. Great airport. Okay. And Michael says, MacArthur's awesome. I use it all the time. Good for you. Okay. Here we go. When is the best time to book a hotel in LA for the 28 Olympics? Well, here's the deal. Not now. And not until, first of all, look at Paris as an example. Look at LA in 1984 as an example. Everybody took off. They were blocking lots of hotel rooms and charging exorbitant rates until about a week before the election, before the event. When the blocks disappeared, they disintegrated because nobody was showing up. That's when the rates, if you really want to gamble, you hedge your bets and wait for a week to 10 days before. And remember, what is Los Angeles? It's 86 separate individual cities in desperate search of a community. You're going to find a hotel room. Don't worry. Don't do it now. All right. Oh, yeah, there's our note about Rosetta Stone. It's a great deal, by the way. You want to learn another language, and you should. We live in a global village. They're offering 50% off lifetime membership. Just go to the website you see there, and they'll sign you up. It's a great deal. And you'll go way beyond things like Donde está el baño? Trust me. All right. Our friend Eddie says, looking into escorted tours to Ireland late spring and summer. Any recommendations when I should book the tour and air? Well, what's your definition of late spring and early summer? I'm presuming you're talking about 2025. And if that's the case, email me, peter@petergreenberg.com, and we'll make some recommendations. But you have to be more specific in the question. What's your budget? Where do you want to go? And what's your definition of a guided tour, right? I mean, do you want to be stuck on a bus with 85 other buses at the cliffs of Moher? Or do you want to do it differently? Be specific and I'll try to help you out. Okay, Terry saying hi from Michigan. Is it true that Tayo says, is it true that an airline is required to give you compensation for a delayed flight after 3 hours? Any recourse if it doesn't reach the threshold, say a delay of 2 hours, but not quite 3? Well, once again, it depends on who's got the stopwatch. The Department of Transportation is trying to come up with some rules about compensation for delays. And their latest rule does specify that 3-hour mark. Now, it doesn't specify a specific financial number, meaning you have to provide at least $300 in compensation, or at least this kind of a hotel room, or at least this kind of a meal. Still too general. And may I remind the Department of Transportation that after that debacle, Southwest, meltdown back in December of 2022, the DOT came out with an announcement saying that they were formulating a definitive set of a airline passenger's Bill of Rights delineating airline financial requirements and consequences and responsibilities in the event of A, B, C, or D. It is now the end of July today of 2024, and we have still not seen that Bill of Rights. Why don't you write a letter to Secretary Buttigieg and say, hey, you want me to vote? Protect me. Let's go. Remember, look at the last meltdown with the software. If you don't have severe financial consequences for bad behavior, whether it's the airlines or a dry cleaner, the bad behavior continues because it's then just written off as the cost of doing business. That is absolutely not appropriate. Okay? Okay. Now, let me scroll up here while we have a second. And remember, today's the last day of July. So coming up next month, which basically starts tomorrow, we premiere our next in our Hidden series. And that show is called Hidden Belize. Here's a sample.
Most people think they know it for its gorgeous beaches, great diving, and a vast seacoast. But most people don't know it. So get ready.
Are you scared?
To feel the rhythm, then get up close and personal in the jungle. And then a deep dive into a history of mythical proportions. And yeah, you're gonna get wet too. I'm Peter Greenberg, and welcome to Hidden Belize.
And later this year, it'll be followed by our first visit to a U.S. state, Hidden Mississippi. And later, Hidden Uganda, Hidden Egypt, and a few others. So we'll keep you up to date on when those shows are premiering. Again, on PBS, and then on Amazon, Apple TV Plus, YouTube, and other platforms. So I hope you'll get a chance to check those out. One other housekeeping note, only a few seats left on our special river cruise that's happening this November that I'm doing to benefit the University of Wisconsin Alumni Association. Throw up the map, Anthony. There it is. We're doing the Arabian Gulf. We're starting in Muscat in Oman. You can't get more magical than there. It's like a Hope Crosby movie. And then sailing the waters through Bahrain and then into the United Arab Emirates. It's a fascinating part of the world. And for those of you who may have some fear about that location, again, I say it every week, buy yourself a map. How about a guide? How about an atlas? And you'll realize it's nowhere near any of the troubled areas in Gaza or the West Bank. This is an opportunity. I've done this trip. I first started doing this trip back in 1978. I guarantee you this is a magical mystery tour. I'll be speaking a number of times during the cruise as well. And of course, it benefits my pals at the University of Wisconsin Alumni Association. So I hope you will join me. Let's go to the photo of the week. I love this photo. Speaking about light. There it is. Let's thank Will Knox for this. Where is it? It's Ojai, California. He waited for the light. He says, I was on a sunset stroll and happened upon this glorious moment. Glorious indeed. For those people who remember, it looks like a Maxfield Parrish painting. Love it when it looks like that, especially when it's real. So thank you, Will, for that. And if you think your photo qualifies as the photo of the week, you know what to do. Just send your entry to photocontest@petergreenberg.com. And if we agree with you, it goes right up there next to Will's. Thank you again, Will Knox. Let's go to some of your questions you sent in earlier during the week. And Lorena says, how about when you book a Delta One suite for a 15-hour flight, and at the gate, they tell everyone there is no Wi-Fi on the flight. Then before you board, they tell you the screen in your suite doesn't work. But you board the flight, the screen does work, but there's no power in your cubicle. It took 5 flight attendants 20 minutes to figure out how to manually decline your seat to a flat position. Would you be entitled to some compensation? Absolutely, but here's what airlines do, and it really pisses me off. If you're going to spend that kind of money for that seat, and Lorena, you know exactly how much money you spent for that, and it was equivalent to a small Toyota. What are you buying? You're buying the opportunity to lie flat. You're not trying to buy the opportunity for a flat lie. You want the seat to completely fully recline so you can sleep. It's a 15-hour flight. You want to have access and connectivity, not just if you're sitting in that seat, but anybody else on the plane for 15 hours. Look, Delta Airlines has marketed itself as the Wi-Fi airline, right? They didn't start it. They didn't start it for free. That was JetBlue. But still, Delta has marketed itself as a great Wi-Fi airline. No connectivity, not good. And then, if they can't operate power to your suite, your battery is never going to last that long. So, let's go back to the question of, are you entitled to compensation? Yes, you are. You paid for something that you didn't receive. By the way, if you bought a television set and it only got one channel, wouldn't you get compensation like another television set? So here's what airlines do. And again, it pisses me off. They're going to say, oh, we're so sorry, Lorena. Here's 5,000 bonus miles. To do what with? Paper your wall? No. Again, let's go back to the passenger bill of rights that we're waiting for from the DOT that should spell out tangible financial compensation when they do not deliver the service you paid for. Now, if they're out of chicken that night and you ordered chicken, you know what? Live with it. But on a 15-hour flight where you paid for rest, connectivity, and a power outlet, that's unacceptable. Let me see did you ask for compensation, Lorena? Did they give you anything at all? Let me know. Okay. Linda says, did you say you get to the airport 3 hours before an international flight? I do. Now, there's a reason for that, right? Because things change, right? It's not just getting to the gate on time. It's getting through security on time. It's making sure your baggage goes or your baggage connects. Now, obviously, every airport is different. If you're connecting in, Coos Bay, Oregon, for a flight that goes to Portland and then goes international, you don't have to get to Coos Bay 3 hours before your flight. But if you're leaving from Portland, yeah, you do. All right. Okay, Judy says, I've never been to Italy before. I only have 5 days I can spend in Italy because of certain cancellations on another city in my existing travel plan. Any recommendations how to spend those 5 days in Italy? Well, you say we planned 2 days in Rome, 2 in Milan, and 1 day in Florence. It's not enough. Don't do that to yourself. If you're only going to be 5 days in Italy, pick one city. Otherwise, you're going to come home needing a vacation. Right? You also didn't tell me when you're going. That makes a difference as well. Okay. M says, I'm going to Portugal in a month and debating whether I should take a day trip to Sintra. This would leave me with only 1 day in Lisbon. It's also peak tourist season. I heard Sintra is packed with tourists. Well, Lisbon tourists too. Wait, you're only going to go to Lisbon for 1 day? How long is this entire trip? You didn't tell me that. Let me know. Laney says, I have a batch of homemade pecan candy that's in a large lasagna pan. I'm flying from Louisiana to Georgia. Is it possible that if I put them in Ziploc bags, it would make it through TSA? Well, is the pecan candy solid? That's the key, right? Because it gets down to whether or not the TSA defines it as a liquid. So if it is, then you know what? You go right ahead and not take it, right? But if it's solid, yes. And if it's in a see-through Ziploc bag, of course you do, all right? Remember, there was a time when the TSA determined that a peanut butter and jelly sandwich was a liquid. Come on, give me a break. And they also determined that a pecan pie was a liquid. They've grown up from those days. But you know what? Be smart. If the candy is hard and they can see it, you'll be fine. All right. Okay. Ben says, my girlfriend and I would like to take a weekend away this fall to the New England East Coast area. We do not have much time and are looking for a town city that has it all. Well, how much time are you talking about? You just say a weekend getaway. And then where are you flying from? You didn't tell me that either. So you know what? Tell me that and I'll answer it. Make your questions more specific. All right. And Christina says, we're going on a summer trip to the French Riviera, traveling almost strictly to go to the beaches. Which city has the best sandy beaches? We were thinking Cannes or Nice. Are the beaches better elsewhere? The answer is the beaches are much better elsewhere, but the problem is they're all going to be crowded. And in many cases, you're going to have to pay to be on that beach because a lot of those beaches are controlled by the hotels that front them. So give me a much more specific answer or question, if you can, as to what time you're going to be there. Other crowded Europeans. All right, let's keep going down here. I'm going to scroll down. All right. I'm waiting. Oh, okay. From Bob, this October, 2 couples and my wife and I have a flight scheduled from DFW to Bogota and return flight from Cartagena. Any alternative travel tips for us to arrive from Bogota to get to Cartagena? Our return flight to DFW departs from Cartagena. Again, you haven't told me how much time you're spending in either of those cities, but if you really want to have some fun and have an adventure, take the bus. Nothing beats a Colombian bus. I mean, take plenty of pictures. You'll probably be singing halfway through. It's an amazing adventure, and it's not expensive. All right, I'm telling you, it's worth it. All right, let's keep going here. Any update on using credit cards in China? Yeah. I have no idea where somebody gave you that information. Of course you can use credit cards in China. All right? Every hotel accepts them. Most restaurants accept them, right? And if worse comes to worse and you're staying at a hotel in China, you can do a cash out on your credit card or have it billed to the hotel and they'll put it on your credit card. It's easy to do, but I know of no instances right now where you cannot use your credit card in China. All right? So there you have that. All right, before I forget, we've talked about, of course, where we are on the ship, where we're going. This Saturday, of course, our radio show, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, going about 10:05. If you can't find it in your market, that's okay. We stream it live on our website. That's petergreenberg.com, and it's coming to you from Napa, California, one of our great wine capitals. So I hope you'll tune in with some surprises that go way beyond wine. That's all I'm going to tell you on that. All right, last couple of questions before we sign off here. Oh, okay, Matthew's saying greetings from Syracuse. All right, nice to see you, Matt. Oh, yeah, one more thing. And I said this before. There are still thousands of bags waiting to be returned to their owners in Atlanta, at Heathrow, and let's not forget Amsterdam, where my bag spent an unneeded vacation. And so what you need to know is, number one, if the airline is offering you vouchers or future flight credits, that's a joke. Most of you don't need them, and most of you won't be able to use them. Remember, if the airline cancels your flight for any reason whatsoever, you're entitled to a full and immediate refund, not a future flight credit. We're not in the business of giving interest-free loans to the airlines. That's number one. And number two, if you're stuck at an intermediate airport and you need accommodations or a meal and the airline offers you a voucher, remember this. The voucher is meaningless unless you get to a meaningful definition of terms. And what does that mean? How much is the voucher worth? And is the airline guaranteeing you a hotel room for that voucher? Not just something you can apply to a hotel that doesn't exist because all the other rooms are full on their room block. Do not leave the gate or the counter without negotiating that voucher. And that also applies to the meal voucher they give you, which is usually laughable with a dollar value of like $12. For $12 at the airport, I said this earlier, I'll say it again, that basically gets you a demented Cinnabon. That's not what you had in mind. Remember, we're living in a negotiable world now. Are you listening, Delta? It's going to cost Delta almost $500 million in compensation based on the meltdown that happened 2 weeks ago. And guess what? They tried to fight it, and they couldn't because the DOT said, nope, it was under your control, pay up. And because Southwest Airlines set the precedent for covering people's babysitting services, their accommodations, their alternate forms of transportation home, Delta's going to have to do the same thing. They're not happy to do it, but then again, they didn't exactly recover well when the software crashed. You know, I said this last week, I'm going to say it again. While we're embracing artificial intelligence as the next exciting coming of Jesus, why don't we investigate human stupidity instead? Why would you have a system that didn't have a backup? 2 words here, manual override. Do you think I put anything on my phone? No, I print everything out. I may not be politically correct. I may be killing a few more trees, but until we get common sense that doesn't suffer at the form of technology, I'm a huge fan of paper trail. How many times have other people been unable to board their flights because their battery died and they don't have their boarding pass? I just show up with a printed copy and bye-bye. Now, that's basic stuff. But then again, it's basic common sense. And they're not thinking straight. Right? You know it and I know it. So remember, you have rights here while we're waiting for the Department of Transportation to come up with a definitive passenger bill of rights. You might want to remind the airline that some of those rights already exist. And that's the existing DOT rule that says if they cancel your flight for any reason whatsoever, you're entitled to a full and immediate refund to your original form of purchase, right? Don't take the voucher. Don't take the future flight credit. It's meaningless. And for those people who bought a ticket and then didn't get what they were paying for, and the airline's offer of compensation was 5,000 bonus miles, laughable and unacceptable. Now, I'm not here to do battle with the airlines every day, but if they're going to be arrogant and stupid at the same time, that's the recipe for the disaster that got them in trouble in the first place. So continue to let me know what your problems are. We'll solve them. I'll see you on the radio on Saturday. A big shout out to Nils for the graphics, for Anthony for handling this back in California. I'll be in Vancouver tomorrow morning, and I'll see you on the radio from Napa Valley, California on Saturday. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week from another location somewhere around the world. Bye, everybody.